Hello, Imagi-Con. I am here today with Melinda Smith, who has been costuming for conventions for years now, and she's extremely talented. Thank you for spending time with us today and sharing all your creations. And I have just a few questions for you. When and where was your first convention?
Oh gosh, it was 97. It was Dragon Con of 1997. I went with my now husband, but at the time we were engaged. And he said, if you really want to know me and what I'm into and what I love, you got to come to this convention with me. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what to expect. That sounds a little scary, but it also sounds kind of fun. So we went, and it was in Atlanta, and it was definitely a crazy experience.
Now, for your first convention, since this was your first one, were you costuming that time?
We did. I didn't really know, didn't really know what to expect, and I knew that people cosplayed, but I had never really done it before other than just a few Halloween things that I had put together. So I was very into fairies at the time, so I did make myself a pair of wool wings to wear, and that was probably one of the first things I ever really did that took more than just a couple of days. So I did that, and then we did we dressed up like the Phantom of the Opera and Christine, and that was a little couple thing that we did. And then we also did our own little version of a lion tamer and the lion. My husband had the lion makeup and did his face, and he had the long wig on and the blonde hair and everything. So it was kind of a rock and roll lion tamer and the lion sort of a thing. It was pretty funny.
You know, I didn't touch on this in the questions, but you were also making fairy wings that you sold for a while, weren't you, at Renaissance festivals?
I did. We did that for several years. I discovered a way that I could do them using coat hangers and nylon, and didn't take too long, and my husband had the ability to airbrush. So he had a corner set up in our apartment when we first got married with his easel, all of his equipment. And I would make wings, and then I would draw and design some ideas of how he could paint them. And we would set them up in the corner, and he would look at my designs, and he would airbrush all of the different colors and things that I had put in the drawing. And so we were kind of a team. We were kind of a fairy wing making team for a few years. And we would go to some Renaissance festivals, and we would sell them, and then it got to where I just enjoyed doing it more for friends and myself for conventions, and so we just decided to pour that energy into just making cool things for other people that we knew, rather than traveling and trying to sell them. So,
well, to get back to the convention conversation, what was your favorite thing about your first convention attendance at Dragon Con? What was the best thing?
Oh gosh. Probably my favorite thing was seeing so many people with the same kind of passion that I had for fantasy things. I have such an appreciation for just for certain video games and fantasy movies, and I love certain comic books and things like that. And you know, growing up in school, it's hard to kind of find people that have those same interests. And here you are at this convention where everybody appreciates everybody's love for anything sci-fi fantasy related, and it didn't even matter if we liked the same thing. We appreciated each other for our creativity, for our love for those things, and just being among my tribe, I think, was the greatest thing ever. And there was just hundreds of people with that same like-mindedness and that same joy of celebrating the things that we all love together. So that's what I enjoyed the most.
I understand. At this point, how many costumes have you put together, either put together or handmade, for different convention events?
I don't even know. If I had to guess, I would say both simple things and complicated things, maybe 30 or 40. And that's convention, and I've recycled things from Halloween and incorporated it into convention pieces and just kind of take things from here and there. So costumes in general, I would say probably about 30 or 40. And I end up just kind of selling pieces in order to get different pieces and then break those apart and make more pieces. So it's kind of a hodgepodge of different things when it comes to costuming. Not necessarily a full outfit, but just different pieces of outfits that I would say I've made. So.
Now, when you're costuming, is it usually just you, something you're doing for yourself, or are you part of a group? I know a lot of people do group cosplays. Which is it usually?
We've done both. In recent years, I do have a group of friends that I love to cosplay with, where we take an idea from a movie and a team from a movie, well, like Wizard of Oz, or recently we did the Hocus Pocus sisters, and that is probably my favorite thing to do, rather than doing something on my own, which I have done, but the team aspect is just so much more fun because we all just really get into it together, and I think I've enjoyed that the most.
Now, is there a favorite out of those team cosplays that you've done?
I think Hocus Pocus was my favorite because we got to act in that. We got to pretend to be the sisters because so many people enjoyed seeing us in those costumes. We were encouraged to do more and to kind of play the parts. And it was just, they were funny characters. And so we got to be really silly. And that was really, really fun for me. So I think probably the Hocus Pocus was my favorite. And I was Sarah Sanderson in that little team setup.
Now, did you start off kind of playing into the character's personality when you first started costuming as her, or is that something that just sort of naturally occurred as the evening went on?
I had not seen Hocus Pocus until we had this idea. Believe it or not, I was not really a 90s kid. It's more of an 80s kid. Hocus Pocus came out in the early 90s, I believe. And so that was not really something that I had seen along with the others. So everybody else had seen this movie and I had not. So I decided, okay, well, I'm going to watch this because this sounds silly and fun. And so I watched it and I thought, she's kind of kooky. You know, that would be really fun to do. And she does this little sing-song voice. And so I watched her and I'm just like, that would just be kind of fun to try and do. And she's just kind of silly. And so I think I tried to take on the air of her dumb blondness, you know, and that was super fun to do. And I didn't have to do much, but just kind of have this vacant look in my eye, you know, and twirl my hair, and it was just super fun. So I think watching the movie and then, of course, talking to my friends, you know, we were getting into it and we were getting excited about it, and they were super good at playing their characters, and so that encouraged me all that much more.
Played off of each other.
Yeah, we did. We played off of each other.
And the crowd reaction?
The crowd reaction was the best. That's why I think that particular group and that cosplay was my favorite, because there were so many different ages that were coming up to us and just expressing how excited they were to see us doing this, and they just loved the characters. And it wasn't just our costumes, it was just, you know, the bigger their smiles were, the more we got into it, and the more we started acting. And, you know, we would have our Winifred go, "Sisters," you know, and we would start we would do the swoop, you know, and then I had a few people come up to me and they'd say, "Sing the song that she sings," and I didn't know the song, and so I might have done it, but like I said, I had not even seen this movie until we had decided that we were going to start doing this. But I ended up just loving the movie, loving the characters, and even more so when I saw how much other people loved the movies and appreciated what we had done. So.
And the song you could have done because you have a very beautiful singing voice.
Well,
so
thank
if you've
you.
known ahead of time, it's one of those things. Character, we can build on this and do it different things.
Maybe if we do it again, I will have that song ready, and I will definitely probably do the song because there were multiple people who were like, you gotta sing it. So
Now, as far as the things you've created for your costumes, what would you say is the most complex thing that you've had to tackle so far?
I would say the post-apocalyptic genre is probably the most detailed type of a costume I've ever done. I did a jacket and headdresses, just a lot. When it comes to that genre, there's a lot of pieces and parts that you kind of put into it, because the whole idea behind that genre is that you're living in a world of waste. It's a wasteland, and there are no resources that are specifically being made for people anymore. You have to find things and create clothing. You have to find things and create protection and weapons and housing and all these things. You've got to scour and find stuff, and so there's a lot of just found objects and parts and garbage, and just things that people would consider trash today, but in a world like that, people would think that's useful to me. I can use that and make armor. I can use that and make protection or something. And so taking that idea, I literally was digging through toolboxes and trying to figure out how can I put this and this together, and so it just required a lot of thought and a lot of just kind of preparation and setting out all my things and figuring out what can I do, what can I put together and make it wearable.
Now, when you start a project like this, do you you have an inspired concept from somewhere, and then you do research to gain further information and inspiration on how to make things?
Yes, as far as the most complex piece that I have done, I'll show you this jacket that I've got. This is a coat that I created for a post-apocalyptic look that I did 2 years ago. And for this jacket, I had to do some research because I saw a piece very similar on Etsy that I loved, and it was literally about $500. And I thought, there's no way I can afford that. I wonder if I could make something like it. So I started breaking it down. I looked at all the pieces and I thought, well, I need some pieces of leather. And so I had a friend who I knew did leather work, and he cut out 2 triangles for me, and he molded them for me to be like these shoulder epaulettes. And once he did that, and he burnished the edges, and then I took them and I painted them, and I realized that you have to have, if you're going to do leather, you have to have a certain kind of a paint. So you've got regular paint, you've got acrylic paint and that stuff, and then you have leather paint. So you've got to do some research and find out, okay, what kind of a product is going to work on what kind of a fabric or a piece. Because it's very specific sometimes depending on what you're using, and if you don't use the right thing, it can crack off, it'll rub right off, it's just not going to work. So I did some research and found the paint that I needed. I knew I wanted some rusty pieces, and sometimes, even when you're digging through a toolbox, you can't really find the perfect kind of rusty pieces that you want. So you have to create that rusty look. And I did a little research and found out that you can take some metal shavings. Metal will rust, but aluminum won't. So if you have an aluminum grommet, which is a piece that looks like this, and you want to use a grommet on a piece that you want to look grungy and dirty, it's not going to rust just by putting water on it. You have to mix a solution, and you got to sand it down, and then you got to put it in that solution, and then it'll rust, because only metal will actually rust. And in this case, I bought some iron filings from a school supply store, and I would just sprinkle it on some of these pieces, and then I would brush that solution on. I can't remember what all you use. It's something like it's salt and I don't know if it's bleach or vinegar. It's some kind of a solution that you use to rust things that are not rusted, but you would dip it, I would dip it and then rub it on here, and then only then would these pieces actually rust. So it did take some research and figuring out how to make it happen, and I had a lot of moments where it wasn't working. I had to take parts off and then redo parts. But eventually I was able to get all the chains and the grommets and all the pieces.
Where did you get
to
the
rust.
different sizes of chains from?
The chains I purchased at Walmart. So really, you can go anywhere and get stuff cheaply. This is just a bike chain or regular, not bike chain, but just regular chain. This is like it's almost like a jewelry chain, but you have to, kind of look at your grommets and look at the sizes and get jump rings that will fit through your grommets. So it took some time. It took some research to kind of figure out what size I needed for what, and it was time consuming because it required sizing and a lot of trial and error.
Was the cat, the application of the cat, where did it come from?
This was a patch that was purchased on Etsy, and I loved it. I thought it was kind of retro, and to me it gave the piece a little bit more of a whimsical look. I think that there's a lot of elements in post-apocalyptic design that take in different time periods. You'll see little pops of the 40s, little pops of the 50s in there, here and there. I think this gave it a little bit of a retro look. A lot of times in post-apocalyptic gear, they will use bottle caps and create badges and pins and things to decorate their outfits. And so we've got some little retro pieces here.
Were those purchased or made or both?
These were made. There is a video game, and in this post-apocalyptic video game, it's so hard to say. One of the drinks that they drink is called Nuka-Cola, and so they had some of these for sale on Etsy, and I thought, well, surely I could make these. Sorry, my kitty is enjoying the little chain stapling there. But that's another thing, is that you'll see things on Etsy and you get a lot of great ideas, because that is a website full of artists who make these things and then they sell them. But a lot of times that is art and it's very expensive. But if you see those things, it's so easy to try and just make it yourself. Just get what you need.
Of inspiration.
Right. So I could have purchased one of these pins with this Nuka-Cola symbol for $12 on Etsy, when really I just needed a bottle cap, a hammer it down, rest it, and then I printed off some little images of the Nuka-Cola, and then I printed off a little image of a smiley face, cut it out, and then just glued it on. And so a lot of times you get inspiration from other places, but it's so easy to just make it yourself if you just put a little time into it.
Now, when you did the post-apocalyptic look, you had a full outfit, head to toe, and there's a couple of other pieces, I think, that went with that particular costume. Do you want to share some of that?
I can. This is a Mohawk that I created. This is another piece that I saw something very similar on Etsy, loved it, and I thought, gosh, that's just beautiful. I wonder, but it's so expensive. They were $200. And I thought, well, how can I make that on my own? And so I just took a piece of cardboard and then molded it around my head, and then made paper mache and covered it with some felt. And then I attached it to a headband to make sure that it would stay on my head. And took some I think I just took some wire, like if you have some heavy wire like this, you can make yourself like a sort of I made a ridge that would kind of sit. I glued it on top of the piece here, and then I glued all the feathers to that wire ridge that I made. And everything just kind of stayed. Just get yourself a really good glue gun, some super glue, and just keep adding and adding until you've just got this coolest piece you've ever seen.
Is the wire kind of containing the feathers in a row?
It is. Everything I kind of poked down into the structure that I made. It's like a, I'm not sure what I put in there, but I made just a wire piece that would go in there, and I could put all of the other pieces down inside.
And the feathers came from a craft store?
Feathers just came from a craft store. Yeah, you can buy just bags of them. And I wanted this to have a real primitive look. Another aspect of post-apocalyptic is tribal. A lot of times, in that genre, there's no government. It's people. It's gangs. It's people all, just trying to find their people and for protection. And it's almost like they're going back to tribal days where they're forming, clans. And so I wanted to put some of that clan look in this headdress in particular, by adding the feathers, and then of course you've got the rusty bottle caps and whatnot.
And they usually carry weapons because the world is dangerous now.
Yes.
You have, I think, a weapon over here that you made to go with the costume?
I do. I was inspired to do this bat. There's many cosplayers out there who have done bats with nails. I know that this particular weapon is used in a lot of different video games. The idea of this
makes me think of The Walking Dead.
Yes, absolutely, which is a perfect idea of a post-apocalyptic world. But this one in particular, I wanted it to kind of go with what I was doing, and so I added the stripes that I had on the jacket, added the stripes to the bat down here, took some pieces of wire that I had in a toolbox. I used paint to make it look like wood because the bat is actually plastic. This is like a wiffle ball bat, and so it was very light when I bought it, and then when I added all of these, it made it a bit heavier, so it's got some weight to it now, but the plastic made it easier for me to turn it into a cosplay piece because it would have been difficult to hammer nails into a solid wood bat. It would have taken a while. So, I mean, the key is to go cheap, to go with something very easy, something that's going to allow you to achieve your end look in the easiest way possible. And while it would have been cooler and more authentic to do a heavy wooden bat, this was just easier for me to create, and it's definitely lighter to carry around.
It's also that weight factor when you're walking around in a convention.
Exactly.
And you don't want to have a ton of stuff. Well, sometimes you do. It's a really elaborate costume, but you think about comfort when you're doing
Right. And that's very important because you most likely have a bunch of junk on your body, and the last thing you want really is to have to carry around something super heavy. So if you can find a lightweight medium to use and then add cool stuff to it, that's always the way to go. This piece was attached to a dream catcher originally, and I removed it and put it on top of my headdress piece. And then I had a friend who allowed me to keep these horns, so we incorporated those into the piece, stuck a bunch of feathers down in it, and bam, there we go. We have a really cool headdress.
The beads and the necklaces, were they things that you purchased or found for this, or did you already have them? Or
this piece was in my jewelry box. It was a necklace that I already had that I just didn't really wear very often. So I decided I wanted to add a little bit of regal to the piece, as though I were a goddess or a priestess or someone of high position. Wanted to add a little bit of glitter in there. These pieces were some very inexpensive beads that were in a large container from Hobby Lobby. So I did string these together specifically for the headdress.
And the feathers and the leaves, I see there's leaves around the crown of it and some twigs. Were they craft store?
Craft store. You can just buy bags of feathers, twigs from anywhere. Walmart. I mean, just anywhere you can get these things and clip them off and just put them in your piece and just, keep adding and adding and adding until you're happy with it. However, again, I will say again, keep in mind the weight of the piece. Remember that you have to wear it, and that if you're wearing it for a long period of time, you do want to try and make it as comfortable as possible, because you'll regret it later when you have that huge headache.
Walking around all day in it.
Yes. So, but this was a fun piece to make, and I definitely want to do more of these in the future.
I may have I think I skipped one post-apocalyptic thing we had over there. We had one more piece on the table that was post-apocalyptic. Yes,
this is a bag that I wore along with the post-apocalyptic warrior girl. This is a waist bag that was brand new, and I ordered it because I wanted something kind of earthy looking. And I thought, well, this is way too nice. We've got to dirty it up some. We've got to rough it up. And
did you take it outside and smack it against a tree?
I just messed it up to no end. I rubbed some dirt on it. I think I literally rubbed it in the dirt and rubbed it in sand and sprinkled a bunch of junk on it. And so it's got some paint. It's got some more of these iron shavings that I sprinkled on there to make things rust. Again, some chains. Basically just take any kind of a normal looking piece and just brutal it up. Add chains, add spikes, add just all kinds of cool pieces and parts. I think if I had had enough time, I would have removed these plastic pieces and or maybe done something a little bit more to them or painted them or something. But we were a little bit short on time when we were doing this, and so I was trying to work quickly. But also, any kind of patches that you can find old patches at thrift stores. You can often find bags of these patches, just old military patches and things, and you can dirty those up and put them on. I think that this one right here was in that little stash of patches that I had purchased for a few bucks at a thrift shop. So thrift shops, you can almost always find just, pieces and parts to anything.
Okay, for those out there who are viewing this and want to try costuming, you have some small examples of something that's a little more complex and something that's very simple to do. Can you share those with us?
Yeah, this is a Nerf gun. It's a steampunk gun that was created from a Nerf gun, and this was used for, we had a steampunk themed birthday party that we were going to, and I wanted my husband to have something to carry. He didn't have any kind of a weapon, and I thought, well, we need to create something pretty fast. And luckily I've got 2 young boys, and so they carry tons of Nerf guns all over the place, have quite a few, and I decided to take one of their guns. It was very simple, just like this. And with their permission, I painted it gray, roughed it up a little bit, put a little bit of dark wax on it, and just added some little bits and pieces, some little findings that I had in a bag from previous costumes, and just added some wire and a little finial at the top, and you have a steampunk gun. So just super duper easy, last minute. It probably took me 30 minutes to do. So there's a good idea of something very simple that you can do for a costume. Another idea that you could do as far as accessories goes is I made this bracer. You could call it either a bracer or a gauntlet, either one, but this is a piece that goes on your arm, and this was a steampunk inspired piece. And this was one of the first times that I ever actually used a sewing machine. I usually hand stitch things, and I had seen something very similar on Etsy, which was a piece that you would wear, sort of a bracelet that you would wear on your arm, and I was intrigued by the fact that there were many little parts that would hold things. And so I stitched one kind of like it, and it holds little vials, these little vintage vials in here. I ordered those, I want to say maybe off of eBay, and then added just some other little findings, some keys, some watch gears, some wire, and bits of some silk pieces that I think maybe I found in the remnants bin at Hobby Lobby. But this was one of the more detailed pieces that I've done. simply because I loved the things that I had seen online and thought, surely I can try to do something as cool as that. So it was a little more time consuming, but it was definitely a challenge, and it ended up being an extremely cool piece to make. I added these hair ties to it, and then the buttons, and show you how it goes on. It does take a little bit of maneuvering, but sometimes if you have something handmade, that's the way it is. You got to work with it until it sits just the way you want it to. But I have used this piece probably for 3 or 4 different costumes, steampunk themed costumes that I've done in previous years, and it's definitely by far one of the most commented on things that I've ever done, and it's a piece that I will probably never sell or get rid of because it's pretty special.
So some of these smaller pieces, it's a bit of an investment of time, but it's something you can use for years and years with various costumes.
Absolutely. So it was worth every bit of time that I put into it for that exact reason.